Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
Rob Manfred's ready to play his favorite game. No, not baseball. Chasing the next major payday for Major League Baseball. And this one might just make the game look completely unrecognizable. Plus, on this edition, we'll look ahead to the NFL season with two-time Super Bowl champ Chris Canty. It's all right ahead on Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome in. Fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. How is everyone doing today? How's everyone feeling today? Lots to get into on this edition. We've got to just about the time of the year that's the best on the sports calendar, right? NFL season 3 weeks away. Fantasy drafts are taking place left and right. The baseball is just about to hit the playoff push, and the NBA is pretty much right around the corner. You blink, and it's going to be Halloween before you know it. And if you go to Costco, it's Halloween right now. But enough about that. Let's get into episode 34 of Gordon Damer on Sports. On this edition, we will look ahead to the NFL season. The great Chris Canty will join us. The dude is everywhere and everything ESPN these days. He's on First Take. He's on the radio. He's here. He's there. He's everywhere. And he'll join us in a little bit. But first, Sunday Night Baseball. Rob Manfred was on the ESPN broadcast and really dropped a couple of bombshells about the future of the sport. Now, before we get too deep into that, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you are using to take in this podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever. It really does help a lot. All right, so Rob Manfred and ESPN. By now, I'm sure you saw that Manfred talked about expansion for the sport, but also drastic realignment. So what does that mean? Well, I think it's pretty clear. He wants to wipe out the American League and National League and move to more of a geography-based model, right? You'll have a region. You'll be in the East, the Central, the Midwest, the West. And he made it clear he wanted to get the wheels in motion for the expansion for two new teams by the end of the decade. So adding two new teams, that would allow baseball to have two leagues of 16 teams apiece. So that would take out interleague play every day. It wouldn't be mandatory anymore. But that's not what this is about. It also creates the opportunity for realignment. And Manfred wants wholesale realignment. He said on the broadcast that it would provide us an opportunity to think geographically. And it would save a lot of wear and tear on the players in terms of travel. Yes, I'm sure that's a major focus. But mostly that the postseason format would be more appealing for companies like ESPN or streaming services. And I love the language that he uses. Yes, the wear and tear on the players is such a focus. They have players flying to Japan to open the season, but the wear and tear. Okay, Rob. So some people have floated that potentially it could be 8 4-team divisions, the Yankees and Mets in the same division. And in the process, you'd get rid of some of the old rivalries, Cubs, Cardinals, Dodgers, Giants. You could have a Northeast, I saw floated, of the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, and the Phillies. Now, I've seen that floated. I'm not sure that the networks would be too keen on losing a big market team, failing to make the playoffs, and at the end of the day, money talks in Major League Baseball. So we'll get into the financial side of this and why I think the national TV rights are so important to baseball now and why national TV and streaming services really are the driving force in a lot of this and how the NBA setup is better than baseball setup and how that relates to the expansion and the realignment. First things first, what this has nothing to do with and why I think sports talk radio is so lost on this topic. This has nothing to do with competitive balance or balancing the divisions. It's not about growing the game or finding new fans or developing new markets. I think we all know this, but I think it has to be said because the amount of media members who talked about how this was such a good idea, we got to give this a chance. What the hell are you talking about? We talked about this before, and I would figure everyone would know this by now. Rob Manfred cares about one thing, and it's growing the financial pie of baseball. That's it. That's all. And not the long-term growth, the right now growth, the ASAP growth. It's not a league. It's not a sport. It's a corporation. Never forget that. And he's not a commissioner. He's a businessman looking to maximize the product that he has to sell. So you'll keep hearing these words like new markets, untapped regions, or growing fan bases. Let's call it for what it is. It's a cash grab. Baseball has no interest in being unique anymore. You would think having a product that's unique would be good. It would be a plus. Not if you want every last dollar. It's more profitable to look like every other league, like the NBA, like the NHL. Now you might say, Gordon, is there enough major league talent to warrant 2 more pro teams? No, of course not. But that has nothing to do with this. But Gordon, if there's not enough major league ready pitching, wouldn't that lead to like a spike in offense artificially? Yes, baseball would love that. That's just a bonus. It's not the main focus, but it's a bonus. Now, the expected expansion fee for each franchise is expected to be about $2.2 billion. Rob Manfred would put a team on the moon if someone would pay him $2.2 million for it. So before you say, what about the fans? Baseball only cares about new fans. They don't care about the old fans. They care about the new fans because they don't have the new fans' money yet. The existing fans, they already know they got you. They know they have you. And fans will complain. They'll threaten, I'm never going to watch again. They know fans are fickle. You've said it all before, and the vast majority of you will all be back. So what about the tradition of baseball? Well, clearly, tradition doesn't sell, at least not well enough. Rob Manfred's the same guy who called the World Series trophy a hunk of metal. He's about expanding the financial footprint every year. And every year it gets harder to do that, right? Find new billions of dollars here and there. And every work stoppage, fans will say they're done. They almost always come back. And let's be honest, what's the alternative exactly? So expansion is going to happen because it's through that prism, it's the perfect quick fix, right? Expansion is basically painless. You don't have to overhaul rules. You don't have to negotiate with the players. You don't have to fix the on-field product. You just drop 2 new franchises on the map, wherever they're going to go. Instant buzz, instant money. You can print the money. Every new team means more tickets sold, more parking, more hot dogs, more beer, more everything. And it all adds up. And then you get to the media part of this because that's the real money. So let's get into that part of it. The national TV rights and all that stuff, and why the national TV rights are really a huge part of Rob Manfred's strategy, I think. I think his push for expansion and realignment is largely about maximizing the value of the national TV rights and the streaming rights, because those now are the single biggest revenue stream for the league. I think they're for all leagues, but certainly for baseball. They're bigger than tickets. And they're bigger than the regional sports networks that have had so many problems. So here's why the national rights matter so much, because the more teams you have, the more content and the higher value you have for broadcasters. Streaming networks want content. You want to stick on their platform. You ever notice how Netflix has every show is 2 or 3 episodes too long? They want you to stick on the platform and use it longer and longer. And baseball has a lot of content, a lot of games. So for baseball, 2 new teams means more games and more inventory to sell to networks and streamers, and more markets equals more households, which eventually means more money. So let's say they go with, Nashville's been floated, Salt Lake City, Portland, whatever. That allows baseball to pitch a wider national footprint. And that scale is what the TV networks want when they negotiate these kind of deals. And consolidated TV money is shared league-wide. So the big market owners are going to be all in favor because they get a cut of that pie. And at the end of the day, Manfred is not about expanding for the purity of the game or new fan. He's expanding the leverage in the next wave of national rights negotiations. He wants to be able to walk into the next ESPN or Apple or Amazon or Peacock with 32 franchises and more games to monetize. And national TV and streaming is, I think, a driving force in these moves because the regional sports networks, like Bally's, those have kind of disappeared. And it's pushed leagues to go towards a more national and streaming way to go. Baseball sees this for what it is. And many teams have seen their local broadcasts collapse or disappear. And streaming platforms want full control and exclusivity. So Apple TV or Peacock or any of these, they don't want to go to 30 different teams. They want centralized rights, and expansion helps baseball build that centralized portfolio. National platforms want broad appeal. And the new teams certainly can't hurt that, right? New streamers like the new teams help push for subscriptions. So when you hear talk about expansion and realignment, understand it's less about balancing divisions and more about optimizing game windows for streaming packages. Sunday mornings on Peacock, right? Or Friday nights on Apple TV. So I think what the NBA has done is what baseball is probably shooting for, right? The NBA's national media strategy has basically been that their best games are on national TV. Their national TV partners get the top matchups, not just leftovers. Peacock and NBC, they're betting on those exclusive type of games. In the new NBA deal on NBC, they're putting playoff games and exclusive regular season games on Peacock. So that's going to help Peacock boost subscriptions and engagement. And the schedule is built around national windows, right? The NBA protects big TV nights, unlike baseball does right now. Right now, baseball often buries really good matchups on regional networks. They don't want that. They can make more money, obviously, the other way, and that's what they're shooting for. So how does this relate to the expansion and the realignment? Baseball, I think, wants to build a similar structure. So realign divisions, spread the talent out, and they can better schedule marquee matchups for all these streaming platforms and broadcasters. Because more teams, more flexibility. The NBA's got, 30 teams? And they still manage to highlight stars in prime time. Baseball adding 2 more could create more of those TV matchups. So if NBC wants to get back into baseball and they're going to adopt a more NBA-like packaging with exclusive national games, playoff rounds that are only on streaming. And I think baseball wants what the NBA has, national relevance every single night, none of the headaches of the regional sports networks. And then they can train fans to go to one place for these big games and all these different streaming networks. So when you hear talk about baseball expansion, remember, it's not about competitive balance. It's not about tradition. It's not about fans. It's about serving the networks and the streamers, and those are the ones who are going to write the billion-dollar check. And that's what these sports leagues, and certainly baseball, is looking for. And if the loyal fans get hurt along, so be it. Baseball, by its basic design, I get it. It's a game that doesn't really line up with the new generation. People who are on TikTok and have the attention span of a goldfish, baseball doesn't tie into them. If you go to a game, more people are on their phones than watching the game. And the only way you're going to do that is by making real changes, not just cosmetic ones. But I think a lot of these changes are going to cut to the core of what baseball has always been. And I think the realignment one, the getting rid of the leagues, is so pivotal because it feels like crossing a Rubicon. And I get it. I'm just an old guy yelling at the clouds. But think about it. If you can wipe out the American and National League out of baseball, something that has defined the sport for over a century, then after that, what can't you change? Once that's gone, nothing is sacred. 162 games, too long. Cut it down to 100. Games drag on. We don't have to play 9 innings. Ghost runner in the 10th? We'll get a ghost runner in the 8th inning now. I don't think that this is where it's headed immediately, but it's eventually going to go there. And I get that baseball has to evolve, but I think there's a difference between making tweaks and gutting the soul of the game. And I think when your focus is simply about the short-term money, I think that you're probably going to get things wrong in changing the game for the better. But then again, I'm just a fan. They already got me hooked. So what do I know? All right, we're joined now by 2-time Super Bowl champion. Of course, you see him everywhere. First Take, he's on ESPN Radio. He's everywhere. He is, of course, the great Chris Canty. Chris, thanks for giving us a couple of minutes today, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, G. Thanks for having me on the pod, man. Been looking forward to it.
All right. Well, we'll hit you first with one of your former teams. A lot of optimism surrounding the Giants this year. I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know how you feel about it. What do you see with Big Blue this year? Is this finally the year that they maybe break out of it and win 7-8 games?
Well, you know what? You're going to get somebody's best effort when their back is against the wall. And make no mistake about it, that's where Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are at. I mean, you think about it, a couple of days after the season, ownership had to send out a letter letting everybody know that Daboll and Schoen will return. It feels like that is the unofficial marker for a coach and a general manager being on the hot seat these days. So I think that the Giants have had a really good offseason in terms of addressing areas of need. They shored up the back of their defense with Von Holland and Paulson Adebo. I like the addition of Roy Robinson Harris up front to go along with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and the newly added Abdul Carter. That guy has been an absolute terror throughout training camp. And then, of course, we all saw what he did in the preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. When you think about the New York Giants being really good as a football team, it starts with their defensive line and those guys being able to get after opposing quarterbacks. So I love that for the Giants. The biggest question that they have to answer is, who are the explosive elements in the offense outside of Malik Neighbors? And I think finding the answer to that, along with stabilizing the quarterback position, are going to be the keys for the Giants season. But I do think that they'll be better than a lot of people expect them to be.
Okay. Are you a believer that Russell Wilson is going to be able to stabilize that position? He's a huge upgrade from what they've had, but that's more of a statement of what they had, I think, than where Russ is at this point.
Yeah, I'm not a Russell Wilson truther.
Mhm.
I lean towards Jackson Dart being the answer. But if Jackson Dart isn't ready to be in the NFL regular season games early on, you do have a capable backup in Jameis Winston. I think that's the whole point of Jameis being there. If Russell Wilson is in fact washed, if he is past it, and you're not ready to put Jackson Dart in as the starting quarterback, if he's not capable of being able to protect himself, being able to operate the offense consistently, then you do have Jameis Winston. And so I think that's how Brian Daboll is looking to approach the quarterback position. But listen, it hasn't seemed too big for Jackson Dart. Everything that they've given him so far, he's been able to handle it. You've seen him flash the arm talent. You've seen him use his athleticism to extend the plays, to actually take off and run. So I think that as long as things keep progressing in the way that they have throughout the preseason, the remaining preseason games, then there wouldn't be any reason for us not to see Jackson Dart sooner rather than later as the starting quarterback for Big Blue.
I don't know if you ever had this in your career, but if you're a veteran and there's the guy who's the established guy at quarterback, but there's that young guy who's everybody knows is going to eventually get his chance. What is that like for a veteran on a team?
Well, I tell you, man, as a veteran, you just want a guy that's going to be able to bring some juice and a guy that gives you a chance to win. You want hope, right?
Mm.
And so I remember when I was in Dallas in 2005 and 2006, and Tony Romo, before he got installed as the starter midway through the 2006 season, was the third string quarterback. He was just the guy that you went to go play golf with. He wasn't the guy that we were checking for in terms of building an offensive game plan around, but we got tired of seeing the same thing, which is Drew Bledsoe taking sacks and throwing picks. And so Bill Parcells made the very difficult decision of going with Tony Romo over Drew Bledsoe and then Drew Henson. And turns out Tony Romo was able to bring some excitement to that offense, and he was the catalyst for that team being able to go on a playoff run. Well, not a playoff run, but being able to qualify to get to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And so I'm all about being able to shake things up a little bit, especially if you know that the status quo at the quarterback position isn't going to be good enough to get everybody where they want to go. Every veteran player in that Giants locker room understands that winning is job security in the league. And so it's not a matter of being loyal to another veteran player in Russell Wilson. It's just a matter of putting the guy under center that gives us the best chance to win, because we all understand the level of influence that the quarterback position has on the outcome of games.
And for me, it's so much about the Giants. Like the defense, I know it's had its problems the last few years, but you can see the pieces there. The offense has just been so bad and just so anemic that they could take a pretty sizable step forward and still be bad, right? I mean, like when you're going with Tommy DeVito, like you get into the middle of the season, it's just like, oh, the season's lost. What do you think about the offensive line? Do you think that is going to be maybe not a strength, but at least maybe not as much a weakness as it's been?
Yeah, I think the left side of the offensive line is pretty solid. We got to see how the right side shakes out with Greg Van Roten and Jermaine Illuminor. I think those guys are veteran players, but we got to see how that develops. I really think the Giants can serve themselves by taking pressure off of the offensive line, by being able to run the football, but also having a quarterback that has some athleticism that can force the defense to play a little more honest. When defensive linemen have to be cognizant of a quarterback that has the mobility element to it, then all of a sudden you're not able to tee off. And so that's something that's been missing from the Giants offense over the last year and a half. And so I'm excited about being able to have that element included in the offense this year.
All right, let's move to the Jets a little bit. New head coach and Aaron Glenn. What do you see from them? What do you like?
I love the brand of football that AG is trying to play. And AG was one of my former teammates when I was with the Dallas Cowboys under Bill Parcells. And I can tell Jets fans this: what you saw on the sideline Saturday in Green Bay is not an act. that is his authentic self. He is genuine in that way. He is fiery. He's not going to settle for a whole lot of nonsense. That encroachment penalty on Jay Tufele, yeah, he ain't going for that. All of those guys, unnecessary roughness, hitting players out of bounds and getting 15-yard penalties, he ain't going for that. The AG is going to rein in some of the self-inflicted wounds that we've seen plague the Jets over the last several years.
Yeah.
All of the penalties, all of the turnovers, that stuff's not going to happen under him. And what we saw in their win over the Green Bay Packers is emblematic of how he wants to play. Ball control offense, held the ball for over 38 minutes, don't turn the ball over, force multiple turnovers, being able to get after the quarterback, 4 sacks in that game against the Packers, disrupt the quarterback. We're going to have tight ends and fullbacks as playmakers in their offense. We're going to hit you in the mouth with the running game, and then we're going to look for explosive elements in the passing game when they're there. So I love his football philosophy. It's a throwback style, but it is a style of football that is increasingly hard to defend as you've seen more offenses in the NFL geared towards spread looks. So you see what the Philadelphia Eagles did last year with their run game, what the Baltimore Ravens have done with their run game. The league is cyclical when it comes to offenses, and I think the New York Jets are hitting that trend where we're going to go back to utilizing backs and tight ends, multiple backs, multiple tight ends in the formation, and running the ball downhill.
Well, look, I think the Jets have a lot of good pieces in place. That it's not the typical taking over for a new head coach where you're taking over an organization that's just barren. The offensive line has got to be solved by now. The amount of resources sunk into that. The defense has pieces. They've got they've got a shutdown corner. They can get after the quarterback. It's just, I'm not a believer in Justin Fields. What do you think about Fields, and can he succeed with the amount of weapons that he's going to have at his disposal?
Well, here's the thing I like about Justin Fields. He might be the second best runner at the quarterback position that we have in this league. And every offense that he's been a part of has been toward the top of the league in rushing. Mm-hmm. And so it fits right into what Aaron Glenn wants to do. They're going to run the football. So whether it's Braylon Allen, Breece Hall, or hell, even the quarterback Justin Fields, they are coming downhill like a bowling ball of knives. And it's not going to be any fair dodging. So I can appreciate Justin Fields' playmaking ability as a runner. I would agree with you that he needs to improve as a passer. But some of the things that I saw him do in the Green Bay game are things that he's more than capable of. Throws in between the numbers to the backs and tight ends. I mean, Andrew Beck, Breece Hall, Mason Taylor, when he gets back in the lineup, Jeremy Ruckert, he's going to be able to do those things. And then every now and again, when the run is going, get extra defenders to drop down to the line of scrimmage, then they can hit you over the top with Garrett Wilson or Arian Smith or any of those guys that end up being deep threats for him on the outside. So I think what AG is going to ask Justin Fields to do, he is more than capable of doing, which is why I think the Jets are going to be a tough out this upcoming season.
All right, let's hit you with some of the bigger teams in the NFL. It feels like this is a Super Bowl year or bust for the Buffalo Bills. What do you see for them? And is this a year for Sean McDermott where he's got to get it done?
Yeah, I think the bust part of that phrase is Sean McDermott potentially getting clipped, right? I mean, they're the landlords of the AFC East. I know you're a Dolphins fan, so you know that all too well. They've won the division 5 years in a row. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to get Josh Allen to a Super Bowl. I mean, we're talking about somebody from a talent standpoint, might be the most physically gifted quarterback in the National Football League alongside Lamar Jackson. So it is a shame that guy hasn't had a chance to play for the big one. You've gotten to multiple conference championship games, but it seems like you inevitably run into the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. You're 0-4 against the Chiefs and Andy Reid in the postseason. Something about that has to change. And with the investment that organization has made in core guys that they've drafted, 6 players that were drafted by the Buffalo Bills got extended this offseason to the tune of $40 million plus in contractual value on all of those deals. So they signed 6 guys to contracts. Minimum total value of $40 million this offseason. That is a huge investment by the Pagula family and by Brandon Beane. What they're telling Sean McDermott by what they did by extending those guys is that you got enough talent to get this done. And so if you don't break through, in your ninth season, you start to ask the question about whether or not you're capable of being the difference in your team, getting to the Super Bowl and winning one.
Yeah. The Ravens are right there. I mean, they've at least won a Super Bowl in the past, obviously not with, with Lamar there, but is it the same thing for them this year? Do they have to get to a Super Bowl? Do they have to get to a conference championship game? What's the bar for the Ravens to clear?
Here's the thing. There is proof of concept. John Harbaugh has won a championship before,
yeah,
albeit not with Lamar Jackson. So there's a little bit of proof of concept in terms of this coach understanding what it takes. If you listen to what Harb said during training camp, they're not as concerned with the fact that they haven't been to a Super Bowl in a decade and a half as much as they're looking at the process, and they believe that if they keep putting themselves in that situation, because Lamar is so talented, eventually they'll break through. I tend to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is for Baltimore, this is one of the most stable franchises in the NFL. They just extended John Harbaugh. Eric DeCosta just took over after a 2 decades run with Ozzie Newsome as the general manager. They're not firing the GM. They're not firing the head coach. It's not going to happen, right? They just swapped out the coordinators. Todd Monken's going into his 3rd year. Zach Orr's going into his 2nd year. I don't see a whole lot of change or turnover with the Baltimore Ravens. So when we say Super Bowl or bust, when we use that moniker, I just don't know what the bust is for Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going to start looking at Lamar Jackson a lot differently. The more postseasons that go by without him having a chance to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, he's one of 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL. If their careers ended today, he's going to end up in Canty, right?
Yeah.
Multiple MVPs.
Yep.
He's going to the Hall of Fame. But when we start talking about the qualities of Hall of Fame quarterbacks, competitive greatness, being at your best when your best is required, that has not been Lamar throughout the course of his career. Right? He's 3-5 in the 8 postseason games that he's played in. In 5 of those games, he's had a passer rating below 80.
Yeah.
League average is 90.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lamar absolutely has to be better. It's been trending in the right direction in the last couple of postseasons, but multiple turnovers in the playoff loss in Buffalo, again, continues to be a black mark. It's something that sticks with him. Now, as far as the timeline, it feels like there's a lot of similarities between Lamar Jackson's career and Peyton Manning's career. Arguably one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks that we've ever seen. Not a lot of success in the postseason until they break through year 8, year 9. And so it feels like that's kind of what's happening for Lamar. So it's around the Peyton Manning timeline. We'll see if he can actually break through and get it done.
Another team in that division that you were saying about the Ravens trending in the right direction. It feels like the Bengals are trending in the wrong direction. Everything with the contract squabbles that they've had. And what do you see for the Bengals this year with the problems that they've had on defense, the health of Joe Burrow? Are they a team that you could see making a run this year?
They can't play defense. They can't run the ball.
Yeah.
Seems like an issue. I mean, some were problematic. I mean, Joe Burrow is going to put up video game stats, especially with those 2 receivers and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I like the Princeton guy, Andre Yoshivas. I think he's going to be a hell of a slot receiver for him. They re-signed Mike Gesicki. So they have a lot of the elements that you're looking for, 2 booking tackles that are pretty good at their jobs. I just don't know from a roster construction standpoint you can win in today's game built that way, because your margin for error is slim to none. And we saw that last year. We saw it play out. Like, they have to outscore everybody. And I'm not sure you can do that week to week in the NFL, especially when you recognize that, your quarterback doesn't have a run game to lean on. So for as great as Joe Burrow is, I think the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization are going to undermine any chances that he has of being able to keep up with his peers when it comes to individual accolades or overall team success. And it seems like it's setting up for him to be the next in a long line of Cincinnati Bengals quarterbacks that compete for MVPs, that get to 1 Super Bowl and never really have a chance at being able to realize their full potential. At least not at the scale of their contemporaries.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much, like, I bring this up all the time about quarterbacks. Like, we always say, quarterback, oh, he's a bust. He's a success. There's so much stuff that goes into it, right? Like, you have to be with the right organization. You have to have the right coaching. And it feels like a lot of these teams, they just, even when they get the right guy, like Burrow's clearly a franchise quarterback, But even when they have a guy like that, it still doesn't, they're not able to maximize it. And the Bengals feel like that kind of organization.
Yeah, they do. I mean, listen, from Ken Anderson to Boomer Esiason to Carson Palmer, I mean, what
Yeah.
stops Joe Burrow from being the next in line of
Yeah.
those guys? Now, what I will say is Joe Burrow did exercise a degree of soft power this offseason. He leveraged the franchise into signing his two receivers. It's what he wanted. And when the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization spend more of the percentage of cap on offense than any other franchise in the NFL, Joe Burrow in 2025 can no longer use the lack of defense as an excuse as to why his team can't get where we all expect him to be able to go.
How about the Steelers? Not that we're expecting I don't know what to expect. It could go in any one of, like I would think that Rodgers at that age, it's trending in the wrong direction. But the fact that he's now no longer a Jet, there's at least a possibility that, you could definitely see him having this bounce back season, or what do you think for Rodgers and the Steelers?
You can't help but take shots at the Jets. You can't help it as a Dolphins
Would it really shock you that much? Would it shock you that much if all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers, he's amazing now that he's not a Jet?
Oh my gosh. Listen, man, I'm surprised that Aaron Rodgers was able to fool another franchise.
That's amazing,
I really am. I can't believe he bamboozled Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they're going to learn the hard way. They're going to find out what the other 31 teams already know, which is Aaron Rodgers' watch.
Yeah.
And it's been trending that way for the last 3 years. If the Pittsburgh Steelers were to make the playoffs, that will be Aaron Rodgers bucking 100 years of NFL history. Because to date, there's only been one quarterback that has started and won a playoff game in their age 42 season or later,
right?
And that is Tom Brady.
Yep.
That's it. He's the only one.
Yeah.
So if Aaron Rodgers is capable of changing the fortune for the Steelers, getting them back into the playoffs and not being one and done for a 6th straight year, then yeah, it makes it feel like what happened with the New York Jets was more of a product of a dysfunctional organization than it was the most mercurial player in the last quarter century detonating a franchise.
Yeah. It is fascinating to watch from afar, as long as I don't have to deal with it on an everyday basis. How about the Commanders? A lot of expectations for them. They were the surprise last year. Jaden Daniels obviously was sensational. I do kind of look back on some of their games last year and felt like they kind of got a little fortunate. They're an older team. They got the McLaurin thing. What do you think is going on with Washington this year?
Well, first things first, they better get Terry McLaurin's butt in camp.
Yeah.
They better get him signed. And I hear the arguments about age and, he's not CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. And I don't think any of those things matter, G, because it's not about Terry McLaurin's value to the rest of the league. It's about Terry McLaurin's value relative to what he means to the Washington Commanders, what he means to his quarterback in Jaden Daniels. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals game, the Dallas Cowboys game, you're talking about Terry McLaurin ending the game on the last play with the touchdown catch.
Yeah.
This is somebody that has the most tight window receptions over the last half decade in the NFL. This is somebody that has produced no matter who's been the quarterback for him in Washington. He's had over a half dozen signal callers throwing him the football. And I don't know if you know this, but wide receiver is pretty reliant on the quarterback. So I just don't understand from a program building standpoint and from a production standpoint why you wouldn't want to reward a guy that has exceeded his contract that he's currently on. It just sends the wrong message in the infancy stages of this new regime with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. It feels like they're getting a little bit too cute. There's a level of hubris that they have in negotiating this Terry McLaurin deal. You don't strong arm a guy like T-Mac, not somebody that's a team leader and that stands for all the things that you want your franchise to be about.
Speaking of franchises that the negotiations seemed like they're off the rails, the Cowboys, I mean, Jerry was obviously there when you were there. What is he like? I mean, he's obviously this character that we see. Is he like that all the time? Give me some insight into what Jerry Jones is like. And more importantly, what the hell is he doing with Micah Parsons?
He's one of the most charismatic people that you're ever going to meet, G. And if you get in the room and you're talking to him, regardless of what your point of view is, if he's on the opposite end, he's going to get you to see it his way. which is why it's not surprising to think that Jerry got Micah in a room and thought he had a deal
Right.
without having Micah's agent, David Mulligetta, advocating for his client. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that Micah Parsons and Jerry Jones should be negotiating a deal on the same level without the presence of representation. It seems strange to go about treating your best player this way. I tend to lean toward this being more about the circus and generating headlines and fighting for attention, especially when the games don't matter in the preseason. But the frustration that Micah is feeling is real. And so you wonder, does that boil over into the regular season and how that impacts first-year head coach Brian Schottenheimer and whatever potential that your team might have in terms of being able to compete this season. So it's hard to say that a guy that has a $15 billion business from a $150 million investment is doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But I will say this. The business side of the Dallas Cowboys always serves to undermine the product on the field. And this feels like another one of those instances.
Yeah, and it always feels like he caves anyway. He always caves at the last minute. It always costs him more than it probably could have or should have. So
that's part of the marketing budget, G.
I guess so, right? I mean,
part
look,
of the marketing budget.
I mean, I mean, you do these shows First Take. I mean, the Cowboys rate, right? Like,
yeah,
people want to know about the Cowboys. They might be the villain to a lot of other franchises and the people that fans love to hate, but they still matter. They're still America's team when it comes to that. So he's a genius in one way, but in terms of the actual winning product, obviously the results have just not been there. Let's talk about another couple of teams. How about the Buccaneers this year? I think that they're a very interesting team with what they've been able to do and the emergence of Baker Mayfield. What do you see for the Buccaneers coming up this year?
Yeah, I think it's a two-team race in the NFC South between the Bucs and the Carolina Panthers. I love the firepower that the Bucs have on the edges. I mean, Mike Evans, even though he's getting older, he's still a very productive player. We'll see what happens with the timeline of Chris Godwin getting back. I love Emeka Egbuka and Jalen McMillan. I like Rachaad White. I think they have a lot of the things that you look for. Curious to know what happens up front. Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah.
Not sure if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. He's the anchor for that offensive line. So that will be interesting. The Buccaneers defense, especially their defensive front, is always going to get after it. So I think the Bucs are, a 9 or 10 win team, and they're going to be competing for a playoff spot and obviously to win the NFC South. I think they're a good football team. It's fascinating to see the resurgence of Baker Mayfield because you typically don't see quarterbacks, this late in their career have career seasons. 4,500 yards passing, 41 touchdowns last year. He even had 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, from a production standpoint, he was absolutely off the charts. So kudos to him, the sports character that he has, and credit to the leadership of Todd Bowles. We keep wanting to give his offensive coordinators credit for what he's been able to do with the Bucs. We never want to give him credit, right? And so I think
another guy leaves the Jets. Now all of a sudden he's good, Canty. It's a running team. It's a running team.
Exactly.
I did not mention the Eagles before. You still see the Eagles as the class of the NFC, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We talk about Baker. The part about Baker that I think everybody kind of misses is when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, and there's been so much talk about Shedeur and what the coaching staff's going to do with him. I can't listen to whatever the Cleveland hierarchy is going to say about whether Shedeur is 2 on the depth chart or the starter. They had Baker Mayfield, and they couldn't make that work. So why should we trust their judgment on any other quarter? I know they got about 5 quarterbacks there. Why should we trust their judgment on what Shedeur is or going to be?
I mean, you can stop it at trust the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I guess.
Trust the Cleveland Browns with quarterbacks. You can just stop it at trust the Cleveland Browns. It's just they find a way to mess things up.
Yeah. Do you think Shedeur is sunk there, or do you think that he has I mean, it's not like he has to beat out the murderer's row at quarterback, but do you think he can be successful there? And do you think it's on his own? You know what I mean? Like he has enough talent to be successful, and he can overcome the stuff that we're kind of talking about before to become successful.
Yeah, I think Shedeur can have success in Cleveland. It's just a matter of them positioning him to do so. And coming off of the game that he had against the Carolina Panthers, everybody was heaping unrealistic expectations on him in terms of competing for the starting job, taking things over. And while I do think he will start a good bit of games in the regular season, I don't know that him being the starter week one made a whole lot of sense, especially when you look at their schedule. First 6 games, they start with the Cincinnati Bengals at home, and then they've got a gauntlet of 5 straight playoff teams, starting with the Baltimore Ravens after that. So I'm not quite sure that it made sense to start in week one. And if we're keeping it a buck, this season is all about the Cleveland Browns trying to figure out whether or not Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders is capable of factoring into their future quarterback plans beyond 2025. They've got 2 first-round draft picks in 2026 in the quarterback-rich draft. So can Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel show them enough to justify the opportunity cost of passing on one of those signal callers coming out of college next year? And that's what we're trying to see. And so I think Joe Flacco starting the season, allowing him to take all the slings and arrows, lowering that bar in terms of expectations of the next quarterback in that offense with that talent is a good thing for Shedeur Sanders. Not that any other player wants to get injured or anything like that, but I think this injury that happened in the joint practices with the Eagles could be a bit of a blessing in disguise for Shedeur.
Now, look, the last few years, the team that loses the Super Bowl usually has a tough time bouncing back the following year. Any reason to think that the Chiefs are going to be that way this year?
No.
All right.
No, last time they lost the Super Bowl, they got back to the conference championship game, and 2 years later they won the Super Bowl again. So I don't worry about the Chiefs being able to respond the right way. If you're asking me which team responds the right way or who do I have questions about responding the right way after Super Bowl 59, it'd be the Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. They have the talent, but they got a lot of young guys playing key roles on that team. You look at that defense, it's loaded with second, third, fourth-year players. And after an offseason of everybody telling you how good you are, after going to all of the parties after you win the Super Bowl, after getting the celebrity that you never knew you had, it just becomes hard to go back through that grind again. As my former teammate OCU Manura used to always say, it's hard to eat when you're full. and right now, the Eagles are full of all of the praise that people have been heaping on them. I trust the sports character of Jalen Hurts, but it's a tough task to lead the rest of that locker room in the way that he would need to in order for them to get back there. That's why before the Kansas City Chiefs, it had been 20 years since we've seen a repeat champion. Hard to do.
Any other team out west in the AFC that you have a faith in? I mean, every time around this time of year, people start convincing themselves this is going to be different for the Chargers this year. And then Slater goes down. The Raiders, maybe you can, Pete Carroll's there.
Hey, listen, I like the Raiders.
You never know.
I like the Raiders.
Oh,
I like
really?
what they're doing. I like the Raiders. I like what they're doing. I would say this. I think the Denver Broncos are feisty. Mm-hmm. Sean Payton, if you look at what he's been able to do, 17 years as a head coach in this league, and he's had 13 top 10 scoring offenses, and he's had 10 top 5 total offenses. So he's put together really, really good offenses. We know what time it is with their defense. It's one of the best, if not the best in the entire league. But I do think their offense is going to come to the party in a big way. He's got a quarterback that's tailor-made for him in Bo Nix, quick release, really accurate, good at processing information. And then you've got enough weapons around him with Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims, and now they've added Evan Ingram and then drafted R.J. Harvey. I like, and they've got a good offensive line too, anchored by Garrett Bowles. So I like the offense for the Denver Broncos. I think that's a team that can surprise a lot of people.
How about Minnesota this year with J.J. McCarthy? What do you think? After not playing at all last year, a lot of pressure. I mean, they went out last year with what did they win? 12 games, 13 games, whatever it was. What do you think about J.J. McCarthy this year stepping in?
I think he's being handed the keys to a Ferrari, and you're hoping that the teenager doesn't wreck it.
Yeah.
That's where we're at with this. I mean, J.J. McCarthy, I thought there were a lot of good things that he did in the preseason game. He was able to put together a couple of scoring drives. He converted a fourth down with his legs. The athleticism element there, a little more than Sam Darnold provided for him last year. We'll have to wait and see. There were some throws that he made that were good throws. There were some throws that he missed. And so I'm curious to know how he looks with everybody game planning for him. But I think Minnesota was really wise to invest up front on both sides of the ball in the way that they did. They brought over Will Freeze and Ryan Kelly from the Indianapolis Colts. They brought over Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to be in the middle of that defensive front to go along with the pieces that they had with that group. So I like the direction that Minnesota is going in terms of roster building. I think the biggest question is whether or not the quarterback is going to deliver. But I guess what should give Vikings fans some degree of solace is that I don't remember a Kevin O'Connell coach quarterback playing poorly.
Right. And this is, so you think that this is their guy, right? They traded up for him, I think.
This is his handpicked guy. This is his handpicked guy. So we'll see what ends up happening with that.
What do you think with Darnold now? I mean, I would have said to him if I was his agent, I don't care what the Vikings offer. Just stay here and rebuild your career for another year or two. Now in Seattle, are we going to look back on his year in Minnesota as the starter, as the exception to the rule, or do you think he's kind of reset himself now?
Well, you know what? I would lean toward the latter. I don't think that there was ever a question with Sam's talent. It's just about a matter of being able to go to quarterback school and rehab and have a couple of coaches love up on him. You know, he had the year in San Francisco under Kyle, and now he's had a year where he's gotten success under Kevin O'Connell, and they have a little bit of proof of concept. So I think he's going to be able to carry that over into Seattle. Mike McDonald is another one of those young coaches that has been known to be able to relate to his players. I think that they'll approach it the right way. They went out this offseason and added Cooper Kupp to that receiving corps, anchored by Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like the running back cannon that they have in the backfield with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. And their offensive line has some nice pieces. I think Seattle is going in the right direction. I don't know if they're a playoff team this year, but I like what they're trying to build with their program. And if you look at the contract, Sam has got, you know, a one-year audition to show them that he's somebody that they can continue to build around. But we've seen this across the NFL with quarterbacks that have been cast off, high picks that didn't necessarily work out where they were drafted, going to other places and figuring it out. We saw it with Geno Smith after a couple of different stints with other teams, figure it out in Seattle. Now he's back with Pete Carroll in Vegas. Saw it with Baker Mayfield. And now, you know, you have a chance to see it with Sam Darnold. So I wish Sam the best. I think he can keep it going in terms of how he's performed last year. Maybe not to that level because people had him in the MVP conversation at one point last year. Right. But I think he can be a solid quarterback in this league.
Is there a guy or a team that people aren't talking about or not giving enough attention, you think, that you see as having a breakout year, or the team that you like or a player that you like this year?
I think the Houston Texans can be a real title contender.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Bounce back year.
Yeah. I think the Houston Texans can do it. They got a guy in C.J. Stroud that's a guy.
Okay.
You know, each of the past 2 years, winning their division, winning a playoff game. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens, who hosted the AFC Championship game in 23. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs this past year in the divisional round. They went on to represent the conference in the Super Bowl. I think the Houston Texans have a defense that is top flight, championship caliber. I think it's a matter of their offense coming around. And when I say their offense, their weapons. You know, they've got Jaden Higgins that they drafted. They got Nico Collins. They got Tank Dell. They need their receivers to be healthy this season. And then they're going to need a running game to be able to give C.J. Stroud and that offensive line some balance. It feels like they played on their heels a lot on the offensive side of the ball and let their quarterback get sacked 50 times. That's never a good thing. So they've got to find a way to be able to protect C.J. Stroud. And I think the running game is going to allow them to do that.
Super Bowl pick?
Oh, Super Bowl pick. Well, I mean, listen, it's the Kansas City Chiefs until otherwise notified.
Right.
You know, I can't go against them. So I'm going to go Kansas City Chiefs, and I'll roll with the Detroit Lions.
All right. There you go. Yeah. Look, this is a big year for Detroit. Got to prove that they can do it without, you know, Ben Johnson's getting all this praise. That they can do it without him.
Yeah, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. But I tell you, when you got a dozen guys on the defensive side of the ball injured, it's hard to win. So I think that offsets itself.
Absolutely. Canty, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you coming on with us, and congratulations on all your success. You are a superstar in everything you do, and I want to tell you that. So I appreciate seeing you on all the time, and I can't you're one of those guys that you're happy for all the success that you get, and you absolutely deserve it. So be good, my man.
All right. Thanks for having me on, G. Can't wait to do it again.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not already done it, please hit that subscribe button, like the episode, rate the episode, share it with a friend if possible. It really does help out the podcast and make it grow. And we'll see you later this week with another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.